Hey everyone, it's your girl Maddie here, aka Beaver Mosh, and today I'm joined here with Tom, vocalist of Allfather. Thanks for taking the time to join me today.
No worries. How you doing?
I'm doing all right. I'm doing all right. Really glad to talk with you. So you have a record coming out in a couple weeks, A Violent Truth, and how are you feeling about that? What are the reactions? What has been the process like of creating and promoting and just kind of getting ready for this thing to drop?
That's a whole load of questions. How I'm feeling about it at the moment? It's that sort of weird time after you've sort of announced it. It's gone up for pre-order. Everyone's excited, and then there's a lull between that time
Yeah.
and when, or well, for us there is a lull between that time and sort of when it starts, when a bit press starts happening in terms of reviews. Hopefully, fingers crossed in the next couple of weeks,
Yeah.
sort of leading up to the release date. So it's that sort of weird feeling at the moment that oh, maybe no one likes this record at all, and it's gonna flop, and no one's gonna hear about it. But hopefully, we'll start getting some reviews like I said, the next couple of weeks leading up to the release. And I'm getting to do loads of a few chats as well with podcasts and stuff about it as well, like I'm doing here. So that's been good.
Yeah.
The general lead up to the record has been 5 years in the making, pretty much. We didn't expect it to be that or want it to be that, but a whole load of stuff happened, including a global pandemic smack
Yeah.
bang in the middle of all that. And we're a band that generally write the majority of our stuff together live in a studio. So there wasn't much writing happening during the 2 or 3 lockdowns, whatever we had over here. So there's some really big gaps in the middle of writing the record, where we kept thinking we were about to get somewhere, and then we had to stop again. And then the recording process was fairly torturous for a while, and then everything else just again taken so long. So it's really nice to be in a position where that's all done.
Yeah.
All the design work's done for the CDs and the tapes. There's one last bit of band admin I've got to do, which is upload everything to Spotify tonight and all the streaming sites. So that's ready to go. Then once that's done, it's sitting back and just seeing what happens and see how people react to it. And then we've got a release show the day after we release the record on the 1st of April in London. So we're practicing for that at the moment. And we had our first practice in a while on Saturday, and that was cool. We got another one next week. So looking forward to that now.
Yeah. Fantastic. And you said and you talked about this like waiting period, this lull, and I can only imagine. And like how long has that lull been? Like when did you like kind of finish the last recording session?
So about a year ago.
Wow. Okay.
Uh, so we started recording it. So what's now? It's 2023 now. So the summer of 2021,
Damn.
we put bass, drums, and guitars down, and then leading up to Christmas of 21, we had put the vocals down. Early 2022, we realised we were not happy with the vocals, and we were not happy with the guitars. So we spent a couple of months redoing those. And then I think in May we got it all sent off for like mixing and mastering, and that was done remotely. So
Hmm.
that the back and forth of that took way longer than we'd hoped, and we've got a great product at the end of it. But that again took longer as well. And I think we got it back at Christmas, and we were like, right, okay, let's just get on with it now. So yeah, it's been a long while for 5 years since the release of our last record, and we wanted it to be like 2 years. But there you go. These
Yeah.
things happen. You can't control it, can you?
Well, I have heard the record multiple times now, and like at least in my humble opinion, it's worth the wait. That means anything to you. Uh, to my ears, there's definitely a a heavy sludge element to your music, but also, and I think this is something you've stated explicitly yourself as a band, but I'll still ask, is it safe to say there is a real hardcore influence, like not like in necessarily like a metalcore way, but like more like appreciating the like core roots of like hardcore punk.
Yeah, so I think our first EP and the sort of I suppose the first idea and the first time we started writing music, it was sort of based around sludge and hardcore. Back in, I think it was almost 10 years ago now. So again, these dates might be wrong, but in my mind, that it was around the time like Southern Lord was coming up, and there was loads of great stuff coming out of Southern Lord.
Mm,
So like, and the bands like Burning Love and bands like Black Breath and things like that had that real bass heavy sort of bottom end going on, and
yeah.
still doing things with like hardcore and metal, and that's kind of where we started with it. And since then we've tried to work out what we can do with that isn't just that, because just doing that all the time is really boring for us. So
Mm,
we've tried to expand on that to see what we can do, and we've gone in the hardcore punk direction in some songs, we've gone in the doom direction with others, we've gone into the sort of slightly stoner areas in some others. But this time round we were like, we want to like push the extremities of what we were doing and be heavier and faster, and in essence a more violent record for it. You know, the theme of violence goes through many aspects of this record, but we wanted it to sound much more violent. So there's sort of blast beats and everything in this one, which we haven't done before. So it does sit in that sort of, I suppose that's where it started from, that sludge and hardcore, and we've tried to build on it from there really, and not just get stuck in like doing one thing over and over again.
mm. So then you've answered my next question a little bit, but so this is your third studio full length, and do you see a Violent Truth as a progression anyway for your band from your previous outputs, and in like in what specific ways do you see that?
Yeah, mainly because the people that wrote the last record aren't all, they're not in the, some of them aren't in the band anymore. So we had a different setup of what we were writing and who we were writing with, and
Mhm.
we sort of got we're a smaller band now. We used to be a 5-piece, we're a 4-piece.
Okay.
And the reason, one of the reasons was we wanted to do things that other members of the band weren't that comfortable with, playing faster and playing more extreme elements. And we wanted to try to be much more creative with what we do, much more comfortable with being creative as well, and move slightly on from sort of compromise of our sound to like cooperation when writing,
Sure.
and bringing on our drummer guy, who's my little brother, who was actually the original drummer, the very first drummer of Allfather for the first couple of months. He was in another band and they got signed for a bit, so he went to do that, and eventually 6 years later he comes back. But it was a different drummer to our drummer that recorded on previous record. He's slightly more hardcore and metal sort of background to what he does, rather than sort of the more stony doomery stuff that the other drummer we had on was. So we were able to do things with him that were different. He was a faster drummer, and that's kind of what we built on through the record, because we wanted it
Sure.
absolutely not to sound like the last one, but to still sound like Allfather playing some music, you know.
Yeah, yeah. So I kind of glanced at the Bandcamp page for this record, and I was particularly struck, kind of reading through the text, by this phrase you list in the description, and you state, and I will put it down in the screen for the viewers to see, but you state, written and recorded across 2 years of global pandemics, increasing oppression, and the slow creep of contemporary fascism. A Violent Truth captures and distills the pent up fear, anger, and exhaustion of living in desperate and seemingly hopeless times. So now I have to ask, how does this music capture that? Where does it show up on the record? And why is it kind of where the album is leaning towards?
So again, from the we wanted it to be a more violent sounding album at its heart.
Yeah.
So, and I think we've captured that bit. We've covered that bit, and then lyrically, me and Andrew, our bass player, write the lyrics for Allfather, and it was trying to capture some of that across those 5 songs that we had. So, for example, "Take Their Eyes," the lead single was very much about, it's about 2 things really. It started off as looking at how sort of very extreme right wing notions were being normalized within the media. And this was back when probably Trump was still in power.
Yeah.
And in particular, there was an article written in the Irish Times, and I really need to remember who wrote it because it's the second time I've talked about this and have forgotten. But it basically talked about how the images we were seeing of immigrants and refugees put in cages and held in cages, and how that was seeing it sort of testing moral boundaries of what people would accept and what people would see from their governments. And, you know, that is absolutely what's happened and now has become more and more normalized. You know, I don't know if you know, but over here in the UK, we've got a big political issue around refugees crossing the channel from France on smaller boats. And our government's current plan is, you know, very right wing, very extreme in terms of how they're going to cover that. And to be honest, our left wing opposition party main complaint is it won't work. You know, the laws won't work. Not that they're terrible, not that they're horrendous, but they won't work. Yeah. So I think that's already happened. So that's what the first part of it was about. That how more and more extreme right wing politics has become certainly more visible and part of the norm over in this country, and I think as in the States as well, and in other parts of the other parts of the world, sorry. And then the second part of the song's about, again, at the same time, we're seeing things like Black Lives Matter protests and various protests rising up in America, in the UK, and around the world, how they were dealt with in terms of sort of violence against protesters from the government, and how many people's sort of view was, well, we agree with what they're saying, but they should try and do it peacefully, you know. And the second part really is about how minorities and communities who have been oppressed for years, both through real physical violence and political violence, are just supposed to sit down and shut up and take it. And the second that something happens that makes people, frankly, like me, you know, I'm a straight white man, I'm in my 40s, and seeing violence on the telly in terms of riots and things like that is an uncomfortable feeling. Yeah. But to react to that, to say, well, just don't do that. Just, you know, let's find another way to do it, is very easy for someone like me to say when I'm not the one being victim of all that sort of oppression. So it's really about the reaction to when that does happen. Should be it's hard to, you know, a positive reaction. It should be a supportive reaction, because if that's the last thing left to people to do to try and free themselves from that oppression, then I think that should be sort of recognised at least. So that's what the second part of that single's about in particular. So really, through the lyrics, we try and capture some of those feelings, and again, we try and present those lyrics in a way that's both ultimately entertaining from a point of view of, we're writing heavy metal at the end of the day, yeah, and we want to write songs that people enjoy listening to and things like that. So there's an element of entertainment to it. There's an element of trying to capture what we want to say, and bringing in, you know, in some ways, some traditional heavy metal and hardcore tropes about how you put lyrics together, yeah, but trying to find that right balance between not hiding everything in metaphor, but also ensuring that each of our songs isn't just a sort of soapbox speech that doesn't actually, it's not actually a song at the end of the day. Yeah. You know? So trying to get that balance between the two things, because, you know, we don't hide the fact we love playing music. We love playing the music we do, and we love playing live. And there's a real element of fun and enjoyment about what we do. And we want that to sort of come across some way in the music as well, without it sort of, you know, extinguishing the fire and anger that we do have about how things are. So again, it's just trying to get those balances right.
And I've mentioned it with my last guest, and really every guest, when politics do come up, it's like, that is my same thing too. Like I'm trying to just be a source where I push good metal, but I don't I have my viewpoints and I'm not going to hide from it. And it's interesting you mentioned these themes because like to my viewers who don't know, I live in Minneapolis. I was in Minneapolis during the George Floyd protests, and I like saw firsthand how these mechanisms that you are talking about are like how the mainstream like media and the government hold these oppressed communities. You could tell us what we're doing wrong, but you still got to do it by our rules, and you know but that's how you're gonna get change, right? You're gonna play by our rules, the ones that are oppressing you, and it's just so absurd. And but also what you're saying, it sounds, I'm glad that more bands are being open about that, because it sounds like it works and it's for metal. Like that should be what metal is about, but like it isn't. It seems like it hasn't been for, but it's becoming that now, which is great.
So I think it has been, and I think I've most always been into some bands that have done that. You know, the bands that got me interested in music, as well as like Metallica and Guns N' Roses. But Rage Against the Machine for me was a massive,
Of course, of
massive
course.
influence, and half of that was because the things they were saying and talking about felt like they meant something.
Yeah.
So, you know, if you're singing Enter Sandman, you're like, okay, what's this about? Oh, it's literally about a Sandman then. Okay, fair
Yeah.
enough. But the lyrics to things like, you know, Rage Against the Machine songs really, you know, and even when I was sort of in my teens when that came out, but you start to understand some of the things that they're talking about, and it opens your eyes. So therefore, and then for when, you know, from the entertainment part of it, and again, not to want to cheapen it, but the 2 times I was lucky to see Rage Against the Machine, I know every single word to every single one of those songs. So not only am I singing along to it in a way that you would because you're enjoying yourself, but those words mean something. And that's what I think we try and what I've tried to create with what we do with Allfather is, if someone's going to sing along, I enjoy singing along
Yeah.
when it means something more. So I think there has always been bands that have done that, but I think more and more, I think people are recognizing it. There's a lot more sort of left leaning music that comes along. Some of it's not great, but you know, it's really good that if people are creating art, they're using that in a way to identify if it's being created. We want it created in, you know, to push those themes and ideas. So, but I think it is more visible, I think, these days. I think people are taking more of an interest in it as well. But you know, I think, and again, of course, I can't think of any bands now, despite having thousands of CDs and albums that have done that. But I think there are certainly more and more, and also music's becoming much easier to create. Not good music necessarily, but music itself is becoming much easier to create. You know, with home studios, the way Spotify and Bandcamp work in terms of allowing people just to upload. You know, there are thousands and thousands more bands than there used to be when I was a kid. You know, looking at the releases each Friday, there's, I don't know, 200 extreme metal albums coming out on one Friday. When I was a kid, there was 2 or 3 extreme metal bands. It felt like, you know, so, and therefore there's just much more music around, and people can create the music they want much more easily and worry less about throwing up barriers to audiences by talking about things sometimes that people may find difficult to listen to or just straight up disagree with.
Yeah, and you're right. Bandcamp is a total game changer. I'm always like, I have to be very deliberate about it, because like it's kind of my job now to like dig through it. But like every day I'm getting an email, label release this, and you follow that label, and then all of a sudden that leads to another thing you follow, and all of a sudden you are just bombarded, and it's great. It's like, I think it's fantastic that there is that overwhelming amount of material, and that it democratizes almost, like, so like more people can do that. You don't have to know the right people, and so we've gotten great records from people that are just like, hey, I'm gonna just fuck off and do this.
Absolutely. So we are mostly a DIY band.
Yeah.
So we previous records were not released on any labels. We did that ourselves, but we have paid for some PR in the past. This time round, Trepanation's helping us release the physical like CDs and tapes.
Yeah.
But again, that's just for those. We're doing our own PR this time round, and we can do that because of Bandcamp. I can basically have a label marketplace for Allfather where our music can be, our merchandise can be, and pretty much all of it is done from the boot of my car. So you know, I send the t-shirts out. I'm not sending the CDs and tapes out this time, thank goodness. But I send the shirts out. We arrange everything, and I can do that because of Bandcamp. Quite frankly, do they charge me? Yeah, a little bit they do, but for what is offered as a result of it was a complete game changer. Because otherwise, pre Bandcamp, to properly sell music, you're either doing it at shows, you're walking into your local record stores and go, "Can you sell this for me?" Or you're trying to get it, or you need a label to help you do it. You need some sort of label, and you simply don't anymore. You can do it yourselves. Is it easy? Not really. Sometimes, you know, packing up 75, 80 t-shirts in your front room and them getting sent, especially now because of the changes after Brexit, and sending stuff around the world has become a massive nightmare compared to how it used to be. But I can do it still, and that simply wouldn't be the same without Bandcamp. And anyone can do it. If they create something, they can put it up there. Whether people will buy it and listen to it or not, that's a different matter. But the facilities for doing that are there, and I hope they continue, because it's a great resource, an absolute fantastic resource.
It's incredible. Now I want to ask about kind of as the band as a whole, and you've probably gotten this question before, but can you give me a little rundown, like how you formed, how you all met, and why you decided to form this project?
So it started with me and our bass player Andrew, I think in 2014, although the tweet that started it might have been in 2013.
Okay.
But we started following each other over Twitter and realized we had some things in common. Mainly, we realized our kids went to the same school. So,
okay.
And we were talking about bands like Vision of Disorder and stuff like this.
Sure.
So we were having a bit of a chat, and we sort of said, "Do you want to, you know, meet up and have a drink sometime? It's nice to sort of meet new friends." And then he just came out of the blue and said, "Do you want to come and play bass do you want to start a band and play bass?" Which was fantastic, apart from the fact I don't play any musical instruments. And I used to do vocals in bands in my early 20s. And I said no, but I can do some shouting into a microphone, I think. So it took a while for us to get sort of up and running. We found a bass player. I had a friend who played drums that said he would come down for the day and just have a jam with us to see how it felt. We picked a Raging Speedhorn song, who are a UK band, again a sludgy sort of hardcore band, but sure. There's a song of theirs that I knew all the words to, and it felt right. And we spent a couple of hours running through it. I blew my voice instantly because I'd not done it for years, but it was enjoyable. And then we slowly sort of started to write some songs. We got some band members in and some band members out, and we managed with me and Andrew, our bass player, and a drummer, Kieran, who was with us until the previous record, wrote a 4-track EP. We recorded that. We realized we needed a second guitarist because we wanted to do a little bit of lead work as well and things like that, have a slightly bigger sound. And that's when Alan, our current guitarist, joined us. And then the sort of three of us, me, Andrew, and Al, became the sort of core of the band, and were the core of the band up until Guy rejoined us, you know, in the last few years to play drums. We're very much a 4-person band now, but up until then, it was the sort of the core, the three of us trying to drive things forward. And we just kept taking the opportunity to write songs, and where we could go out and record. And that's and that now we're here almost 10 years later, which
Okay.
still makes me feel a bit sick. And hope, new records coming out, and hopefully we can start writing the follow-up to that, pretty soon. We really enjoy each other's company. We have the band stuff's all difficult. The good stuff is hanging about, playing music and shooting the shit, So, but the idea was sort of me and Andrew just being like, should we have one more go at trying to be in the band? I mean, I was in my band. I was in bands in my 20s, pop punk, new metal band type things, and I was in my 30s at this point, and I've got 3 kids, and I was always sort of in the back of my head going, well, maybe I could be in a band one day still, and I'd kind of given up. I kind of come to terms with the fact I was never going to be in a band. I love music. I have loads of friends. We go to gigs. That's just going to have to be it. And I'd sort of just come to terms with that, and I was like, that's fine. And then like three months later, he asked if you want, and all of a sudden, everything changed again. And 10 years later, I'm in 3 bands now. Allfather being the main one, but I've got 2 other little things that we do, and I'm sort of ankle deep into music again, and it's great. It's hard, it's frustrating, and slightly scary, but that's part of it. I get to do things like this, is talk to you about music I've made, which is fantastic.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you enjoyed getting to talk to me about this. I wanted to talk to you about. I found the cover art for this record particularly striking, and I like it a lot. And so I was wondering if you could tell me the story behind the cover art. What is being conveyed, and how did you come across it, or who did it for you?
So it's a piece of artwork from the 1400s, I think. So one of the Andrew, our bassist, is a librarian. And what he's particularly good at is general design and things like that, but also finding out of copyright artwork for our t-shirts and for our album art. So all 3 of the main records have had proper artwork on the front from 1600s. So this one, so Bless the Earth with Fire was a whole picture of, I think, one about Mount Vesuvius. Desolation was a skull from a much bigger painting that he used, and then this is part of half of a painting. It was inspired by the fact that a couple of things. One of the elements, so we had a Take Their Eyes, the lead single, the Carrion Crown refrain within the chorus is in reference to getting hung upside down and sort of flayed, and your crown is your skin that hangs off the bottom of it. And there's a whole nother song that was supposed to be a part of, which was about Italian fascism during the Second World War and Mussolini and things like that. But we binned that song. We couldn't make it work, and we took elements of the vocals and took it into this song. So that picture of sort of hanging upside down had been in mine and Andrew's heads for a while, in terms of some of the vocals that we were the lyrics we were putting together. So when he saw that, and I think he saw it on TV in the back of a scene on TV, and researched it and found it and thought, this really sort of sums up that song, or part of that song, and the elements as we were going through quite a sort of vicious, violent record, that all worked. It felt right in comparison to the last couple of records that we did.
Sure.
So visually, it just felt like the next step for us.
Yeah.
We later found out that the 2 unfortunate gentlemen being hung upside down are some brothers from Amsterdam, I think it is, in Holland, and they had basically upset. They'd been corrupt politicians that had upset their town. One of them was the mayor, and the other was his brother. and they had basically upset the town enough that they took revenge, and the picture is that. But more interestingly,
Fuck.
they were connected to a Dutch naval raid that
Huh.
came up the River Medway. We live on the River Medway, and pretty much destroyed the local dockyard where we practice. So our practice room's in our local dockyard. So that was another connection that we didn't know about it until we'd already decided we were going to use it, and was like, oh wow, okay, that's great as well. So the whole combination of things came together, but at its heart, it just looks fucking rad, and that's why we wanted it.
Yeah, it goes hard.
Yeah.
Violent. It worked for the title. Yeah.
Exactly. And then all these other elements came out that just felt that it fitted really nicely. And I quite enjoy, looking at our thumbnails on Bandcamp of the different records, and how the EP artworks are a little bit different, and that's fine. But the 3-album ones just feel like they're connected quite nicely, but different where they need to be different.
So we don't have that much time left, but I did want, before I let you go, just a fun question. Any new releases, records that you've been digging particularly lately?
So the last couple of weeks work has been somewhat challenging, and I've struggled to listen to anything new, which has been frustrating. But I've got the new Necropanther record.
Oh yeah, it's so good.
Times, and I want to listen to it a couple more times. I need to listen to it a couple more times.
Yeah.
There is the is it Underneath, band called Underneath. While I tell you this, I'm going to look up the name of the record, because I know it's on my Bandcamp. So, but they sound like a really nasty Gajira.
Okay. Yeah.
So, what's the album called? Nothing here is held sacred. And it's I mean, I find Gajira a bit boring these days, quite frankly. But they've like taken a little bit, I suppose, deathcore-y, but it's kind of horrible and nasty, and really in a really good way, really heavy. So I've been listening to that, and then what was the other thing I had? Wanderer, the Wanderer EP.
Oh sure.
What's it called? Pure Human? Oh no, The Indulgence of the Unreal. There we go. I really like their last album. This little EP again builds on their sort of deathy grind, quite accessible, deathy grindy sort of approach, which I really like, and I've had that playing a little bit where I can as well. So those 3 records in particular I'm looking forward to. And then I think tomorrow the Cruelty record comes out, like hardcore death metal, hardcore type crossover thing. So looking forward to listening to that as well.
Yeah, definitely. I am also having that Cruelty on my radar, but yeah, that Necropanther, it's like, which I haven't talked about that on the show yet. I'll probably put it on like my end of the month roundup. Like it's like there's so much going on. It's like blackened speed, and there's some like death, and there's like thrash. There's like a lot of elements that they mix together really well, and it's so fun to listen to.
I think that's it. It just fucking goes when you put it on here. Like, so I had it on. I was driving up to see my son at university, and I had it on playing in the car, and it was like, yeah, I need to be careful here, otherwise I'm gonna get done for speeding, because I was just driving. It's just that sort of record, and feel like I said, I've not really delved into it as much as their last album, Doom City. Is it Doom City? I think it's Doom City, that I really loved.
Yeah.
But already it sounds, as good as that, and I think sort of fills a slightly Black Dahlia Murder gap for me.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
In a way that's sort of, fast-paced death metal with plenty of other stuff going on to make it interesting. So really enjoying listening to that as well.
Okay. Before I do send you off, is there anything you particularly would love to a thought or anything you'd want to leave my viewers with?
I don't think so.
Yeah, no worries.
I just really appreciate being able to talk about these sorts of things, like the record itself and what's important to us. Hopefully people enjoy the record and what we do. And if you don't, that's absolutely fine. But yeah, if you've any interest in any sort of metal that's come out over the past 40 years, there's probably something for you in our music. And we invite all to come and listen, really. So Yeah, do that. A couple of weeks time, the whole record will be out. So you put me on the spot a bit there, so hopefully that's all right.
Sorry about that. Yeah. Well, once again, Tom, thanks for joining me. A Violent Truth is coming out March 31st. I've heard it. I would recommend you check it out when it comes out. My name is Maddie, aka Beavermosh, and I'm signing off.